Hey, welcome to Life in the Leadership Lane. I'm your host, Bruce Waller, where I get to talk to leaders that are making a difference in the workplace and in our community. What did they do to get started and what are they doing to stay there? And oh my goodness, here we are, the end of the year, 2023, and we are going to end it with a bang as I'm getting to talk with Kelly Simants. Oh my goodness, I've known Kelly for a long time. Kelly is a senior human resources consultant for Nevada HR team. She also, well, she's certified with their SHRM-SCP. She's probably got a lot more certifications. I'm so excited to have you on the show. Hey, Kelly, how you doing?
Hey, Bruce, I'm great. How are you doing?
I'm really, really good. I know you're really good. I know you're a Washington Husky fan, and this
I
is the
am.
time
Go
of year they
Huskies.
are doing so good, aren't they?
So good. 12-0.
Oh my goodness. Hey, I always like to start this show, and I'm really excited about our conversation. I always like to start the show with kind of a reflection on when I met my guest or when they came into my path. I want to see if you remember this. I didn't get a
Okay.
chance to mention this before we started. It was around 2016, 2017. You were a speaker for Dallas HR, the Executive Breakfast Series. I want to say at that time you were the VP of HR for National Breast Cancer Foundation. Do you remember that?
Oh my goodness. You have a way better memory than I do. And yes, I now remember that. Absolutely. That was one of my favorite roundtables that I've ever done. It was incredible.
I think that's the first time I might have known you before then, but that was the first time I actually met you. And I have enjoyed watching you your career just soar ever
Oh,
since. And here
thank
you
you.
are today helping so many people, so many companies. And we're going to talk about that today. But before we get started, I would love for you just to share a brief highlight of Nevada HR, like the Nevada
Sure.
HR team. And how do you serve your customers?
Yeah, it's a great question. So I'm based in the Dallas area,
Okay.
but our company is called Nevada HR Team because my former colleague that I worked with at Starbucks, he started the firm 5 years ago. And when he first started the consulting firm, I reached out and he's one of those guys that if you could ever work with Cam again, you raise your hand. I reached out and I said, "Hey, buddy, I saw that you were starting a consulting firm and I would love to talk to you about starting it here in the Dallas area." So that's where the name came from because he started it and he said, "Yep, let's do this." The rest is history. I have been, just really serving small to medium sized businesses here in Dallas Fort Worth, but also around the country. And so we can do everything from building an HR team from the ground up to helping with recruiting needs to employee relations investigations. We're an extension of an HR team for any organization. So it's been really fun to help small to medium sized businesses throughout the last 5 years.
I love that. I love that. And I didn't know that story. And I just realized when I was doing some research that you had worked at Starbucks. I'm a big Starbucks fan. I know there's a lot of Starbucks
Oh,
fans out
yes.
there. And so, wow, well, that's fantastic. And I would love for you to share your story. Like, where
Cool.
did you grow up and how in the world did you get in HR? And today you are serving HR like no other.
So I grew up in the Seattle, Washington area, and I knew going into college, I went to University of Washington. I knew that I wanted to pursue business from my very first step in the door there. I pursued business, and I was in the early entrance business program. I knew I wanted to be an HR professional, and so that's what I studied. So I'm probably one of the unique, professionals that knew right away what I wanted to do. And then I had an opportunity to work at Home Street Bank, and that's in the Seattle area. And I had an internship that was a really incredible opportunity to help me understand what HR was all about. I had a mentor, Pam Taylor, who was a VP of HR there at the time, and she really just helped me understand all the different intricacies of HR and what I wanted to pursue. And so after graduation, I actually landed my first full time job as an HR coordinator for the bank there. And I spent a couple of years there. Then I transitioned to Accenture, which at the time was Anderson
Mhm.
Consulting, one of the top firms. And that was a crazy time in the consulting world. We were just onboarding left and right, and I was taking new hires out for lunch. And I mean, it was just so exciting. I was in charge of onboarding for the Seattle market. That was my kind of next phase in HR, being an HR associate. And then I transitioned to a company called WatchGuard Technologies. And that's really where I gained a ton of experience in the generalist world. So I was doing everything from, benefits design to immigration, all sorts of really cool work that I was able to dip my toe in. Became an HR manager there. And then from there, that's when I got a phone call from a recruiting firm that asked me if I'd be interested in an opportunity with Tazo Tea / Starbucks.
Mm.
And that was in the Oregon area. And I'd lived in Seattle my whole life. And I thought, you know what? Now's the time. I'm single. I'm excited for a new opportunity. I'm always hungry for something new that's going to challenge me. And this was a challenge. This was integrating Tazo Tea at the time, had just been purchased by Starbucks. And my role was to integrate all 80-ish employees at the Tazo Tea facility in Portland, Oregon, into Starbucks. Talk about a challenge. I was 28 at the time. It was incredible to just, walk in and really understand how to navigate supply chain HR, which was totally new to me. So from there, fast forward, I was promoted into director of HR, where I relocated back to Seattle and was at one of the roasting plants in Kent, Washington. And I was in charge of the facility there for, a couple of years. So that was just a really incredible experience. And then fast forward to how I moved here, we had an opportunity to relocate. My husband worked for Microsoft at the time,
Okay.
and he could work anywhere in the world. And we wanted to start a family, and the cost of living in Seattle got crazy. And my husband's from here originally. And so we said, you know what? This is the time, if we're going to move, to take a risk and to just explore a different part of the country. And so we moved to the Dallas area about 14 years ago.
That's fantastic. So he was remote before remote was cool, right?
Totally. Yeah,
That is,
exactly.
oh my gosh, that is so great. There is so much here, Kelly. There is so much here. Okay. First of all, I'm sitting here thinking about just number one, how did you know? Like you said, I knew I wanted to be in HR. I have
Mhm.
interviewed almost 200 people on the show, and I would say the majority of people they used the term they fell into
Mhm.
HR or fell into whatever role they're playing. But a few
Correct.
people have said, "Hey, I knew it." How did you know?
I grew up a pastor kid, and so serving people was just in our family's DNA. I knew I had a heart for people, and I loved business. And so, how did the two intersect? It was HR for me, and so it was just a really easy decision. One of the easiest decisions I've had my entire life, to be honest. And so, yeah, I know it's so unique that I knew right away that that's the field I wanted to pursue.
I
So,
love that. I knew I wanted to be in business, but I had no idea what relocation was. I don't remember taking anything
yeah.
or reading anything about relocation. So I fell into relocation and have been here ever since. But I love that. Now, you talked about one of your first jobs being at Accenture. I'm just curious, like, man, that had to feel like overwhelming. Like that's a massive company, and here you are, you're just kind of,
Mhm.
cutting your teeth, and here you are onboarding all of these people in the Seattle market. I mean, as you think back to that, do you think, man, how like crazy was that?
Oh, 100%. It was wild looking back. Even, up until the role as a director of HR Starbucks, that was wild. All of it
Yeah.
was just fascinating to look back on. And I never doubted myself. If I could
Mm,
encourage anyone listening, I never once doubted that I was capable. I didn't know everything, and I would
yeah.
admit that I didn't know everything, but I would figure it out. And I was scrappy, and I would
Mm,
leverage my connections, and I would seek mentorship from whoever I could. And so that's really how I did it.
mm,
I had this fearless mentality that I was just going to hit the pavement. I
mm.
was going to, do what it took to really just climb the ladder, so to speak. And yeah, I had a path and I knew how to get to it.
Now, I know you're involved in consulting. I know you're involved in resume writing. I know you're involved in career coaching, but I do want to like stop on this because there's a lot of people right now that are listening that probably are in transition or they need some coaching. But I'm just curious, do you know, like, where did that fearlessness come from? Like, because a
Mm,
lot of times, yeah, we have this confidence about us, but there are times when doubt kind of creeps in. but to
Mhm.
be able to be fearless and walk through it, any insight on where that came through or maybe how you developed that?
My dad and my grandma are two of the people that instilled that work ethic in me. And
Mm,
so, it goes back to my heritage, honestly, and how I was raised. But I also, I observe and I watch leaders around me. I still do to this day. I have mentors I've never even met, like Sarah Blakely, with Spanx, and so there are people that I call my mentors, for example, like I said, that I don't even know. I've never met them, but I watch them and I learn from what they do. So
okay, Sarah Blakely, if you're listening right now, you need to call
yes,
Kelly. I
call
love
me.
that. I'm a big fan of Sarah Blakely as well. I know she said something a long time ago that stuck with me. It said, the more you experience, the more you can share with others. And
Mhm.
of course, she's married to a very inspiring Jesse Itzler, who
Mhm.
I follow quite a bit. So when you brought
Yep.
that up, you're right. Whenever you can really connect with other people that inspire you and help you move forward, it helps with that. Hey, well,
Mhm.
speaking of mentors, I always like to talk about this on the show because I think it's great to like reflect on some of the people that helped you get to where you are today. Talk, and you've shared a little bit about a couple of, talk a little bit about mentors and how important they are, have been for you and are for others.
Mentors, honestly, for me, have helped me not only navigate, my professional career, but they have helped me develop personally, as a mom, a wife, a friend. And so the people I think about in my life that have served me as a mentor, they help me in a multitude of ways, not just from a business perspective, but understanding how to navigate life's challenges and curveballs that are thrown your way. My husband has had 7 brain surgeries, and
Mm.
that's a really long story. That's a whole nother podcast, but having grit and perseverance to navigate that while working and being, a caregiver and a breadwinner for our family while he couldn't work for the last 4 years, that has required me to lean on my mentors. And so, Cam, who I work with now as my business partner, when he was my leader at Starbucks, for example, he always had my back. He always was, raising my name up in the room, always lifting me up. And I
Mm.
never doubted that he would, say anything about me if I weren't in the room. He always was the person that I could rely on. So I think if you have those people in your circle, that to me is mentor, the people that are always going to, have your back when you need the most help.
Yeah, that's fantastic. I love that. I love how you use the word grit. I read a book, Grit. You may have read that book as well. I
Yes,
think it was Angela Duckworth.
fantastic.
Uh,
Yep.
Fantastic book, right? Just getting that
Mhm.
mindset, right? Right. And then, of course, being surrounded by great people. When I took the job for Armstrong 20 years ago, I prayed for two things. Number one, I wanted autonomy. And number two, I want to be surrounded by great people because I know when you're surrounded by great people, great things happen. They just do.
Absolutely.
And so, for those who are listening, and we're getting ready to talk a little bit about some of the things you're doing to help people in transition. But for those listening, like, how do they go about like getting a mentor or their circle or any thoughts around that, Kelly?
Yeah, that's a great question, Bruce. I always love to, suggest that people talk. They share their story. You never know who you're talking to who might be
Mm,
connected to someone else. For example, my very first internship, that was a connection through a family member that I didn't know so well, actually. It was kind of a distant relative, but I talked. I expressed my passion and my vision for what I wanted. And then, it was like, oh, my aunt connected me with so and so. And so, it really is about the human connection for mentoring opportunities. Now, certainly you can go online and you can find different LinkedIn groups and, various support organizations that, have mentor relationships. But I find that the most authentic, natural connections happen from opportunities, for example, where you might be at a SHRM conference and, you're talking to someone that just spoke and you might ask them, hey, do you have any ideas for who might be a good mentor for me?
mm.
Um, Putting yourself out there, I think is my biggest encouragement to everybody is just to ask, and there's no harm in asking anyone for help.
I love that. I do know some people that are very good at that, and I do know some people that really would like to be very good at that. They just can't quite break out of the shell to
Mhm.
ask. And I think what you said was, it's so simple, but it's the magic. It's like, ask for help, ask for direction, ask for connections, and things like that. Hey, I want to ask you this question
Yeah.
around purpose. I wrote my first book, Find Your Lane. It was really about finding your calling. There's so
Yeah.
many different ways to have success. You got to find what works for you. You knew you wanted to be in HR. You have served HR for many, many years,
Mhm.
and you've served all the way up to the head of HR. How was there a moment when you said, "Hey, okay, I found my lane. I found my calling. This is what I want to do." Was there a moment or were there moments? Talk about that.
My career, I always describe to people, has been a little bit of a zigzag.
Mm,
Just from the different opportunities and people I've connected with, it's not been a traditional path necessarily. The piece of the story that I didn't share about my career is that when we moved to Dallas, I actually started a event planning company. I taught event professionals around the country how to leverage HR in your creative business. And so I've always been doing HR, but I actually did start this event planning company, which I ended up selling to one of the employees that was working with me, who's fantastic. And so the long story short is that you find different lanes in different seasons, in my experience.
mm,
For example, when my husband had all this brain surgery stuff start to happen,
mhm.
my lane needed to be very specifically back in HR so that I could have benefits, stability, a community around me to support me, versus the event planning business, right? And so that was a different lane that I transitioned to. And my career has been a series of shifting gears throughout the different lanes, I think, if I were to describe it. And most recently, though, this is the lane that I'm having, I think, the most fun in, because I'm able to leverage the 25 years of experience that I do have in
Mm.
HR to help so many different candidates through the process of finding a job and being in transition and experiencing a layoff. I know what they're going through. And that empathy that I have is, I think, what I'm most passionate about right now. So you talked about purpose. And I know that's my purpose right now for the long haul. So,
I love that. I love how you shared how there's different seasons of lane changes because
yeah,
there are.
absolutely.
And so for someone listening right now, they just may be in a different season. So they need to look at what season they're in and decide where they want to go. When you talk about that though, and you talked about your husband, I love that. And I've known that and I've been praying for you, by the way,
Oh, thank
and
you so much.
him. And I am about 3 months away from a publish of my next book, and it's around moving your career from success to significance. And as you share
Mhm.
this story, this is who I'm thinking of. Like you've had tremendous success in all these different areas, but now all of a sudden you're like moving it more towards like significance. And I talk about significance as when you really are helping other people. And there's just something
Mhm.
fulfilling about being able to add value and helping people, isn't there?
Oh gosh, yes, absolutely. I mean, what you're talking about to me means building a legacy at the end of the
Mm,
day, and that to me is my personal mission statement, is to build a legacy in business, but also for my family. And so that anchors me to anything that I do. And so every decision that I make, even if it's, do I speak at this conference or do I, offer this opportunity as a service, it's what's the legacy that that's going to leave? Is that in line with my values and my mission? So,
okay, you just said something. I want to just real quick. I want to touch on just real quick. And you talked
yeah.
about that's your mission. And when I
Mhm.
hear someone say that, I think of people that are intentional, people that know their why. And I think those are like, that's like the anchor that helps people get through that. Talk about that. Just, I mean, for those that are listening now, and I would love to hear if you're listening right now, if you have a mission statement, I would love for you to share that. When did you start having a mission statement, or have you always had a mission statement, or talking about the importance of a mission statement?
Yeah, I actually haven't always had a mission statement. It's something in the last several years that I've
Mm,
really refined. And I think going through what I did with my husband's and having him be so fragile, it really shows you that life truly is short, right? And so
mm,
You don't waste any opportunity. And for me, it was, what do I want to, have my life be known by when I'm gone? I've got two boys, they're 9 and 14. And for me, it was not just about myself, but it's for, them as well. And so what kind of business legacy am I going to leave for them as well?
I love that. That's fantastic. Hey, let's talk. Let's talk about
Thank you.
people that are in transition. You do a lot of different things. You do some career coaching. You do consulting for HR teams and businesses. But I want to touch on this people in transition, because we're at the end of the season. Often we see more people in transition during that last quarter. Let's talk about the importance of a
Sure.
resume and around this, because I've talked to some different people lately who have been in one industry and now they want to shift into another, and they are not, and now all of a sudden they don't have the experience and different things like it. Talk about, maybe share a few tips on what a good resume looks like and how people can get that resume to the right people. Any thoughts around that?
Yeah, we have a separate company. It's called My Resume Team, that's separate from Nevada HR. And what that service offers is, a clean, professional resume. So when recruiters are looking at resumes, it's 3 to 6 seconds they're going to spend assessing if they want to contact the candidate or not, typically. And so if I receive a resume as an HR professional that's super hard to read, let's say there's just text top to bottom, it's not concise, it's not telling the story of who the candidate is, I'm probably going to skip past it and go to the next resume when I'm looking at 1,000 resumes that came through the pipeline. And so the importance of a resume is, to catch the recruiter or hiring manager's attention and get that foot in the door. Most people are going to sell themselves once they can get the resume through the applicant tracking system or in the hands of the right recruiter or the hiring manager. And so really the resume is to tell your story. You want it to, how do you set yourself apart from other candidates? And there are certainly ways that we help candidates do that, by really calling out the competencies that they have the most strengths in, and the accomplishments throughout the years. Or if they're a recent graduate, how do you pursue an opportunity? You talked about people in transition. We work with a ton of people that are changing industries. And so I have a personal passion for that because I love to craft the story. Everybody has skills that are transferable. And so it's just a matter of, how do you position that and highlight what you're best at? And so, I could just encourage anybody, in transition or thinking about changing industries or professions. It is absolutely possible. And don't let people discourage you from doing that. Like I said, I've had different lanes and seasons, outside of HR that have been really beneficial to my HR career at the end of the day, and me as a businesswoman. And so I would just encourage everybody who can to, pursue different opportunities.
I love that. It's all about the story. And I love how you say that everyone has skills that are transferable. Like everybody
Absolutely.
has a story. You just got to be able to frame that. Hey, I did a little bit of research before I came on,
Yeah.
and I noticed that you also have, and I don't know if this fits in here, but you also, and by the way, I saw you've been on Good Morning Texas. That's fantastic. I love that.
Yes, that was fun.
But you had something you posted where you have something going on called New Career Transition Intensive, Your Path to Career Transformation. What's that all about?
Yeah. Okay, awesome. I'm glad you asked. That is a new program that we have offered for people exactly like what you're referring to, people that might be anticipating a layoff, or they are in between gigs, or perhaps they've been a stay-at-home parent for the last 5, 10 years, and they don't quite know how to navigate getting back into the workforce. So there are multiple ways that you might be in transition. And like I said, my passion is to help people navigate the often kind of daunting process that it feels sometimes as you're putting your resume out there, or, how do you land the interview? And so we actually have a workshop that I guide, candidates through on how to navigate all of these different challenges that you might face as a candidate in today's marketplace. Every year, it seems that things are changing with how to apply on LinkedIn, or how to get through the applicant tracking systems. And so there are different strategies that I share from an HR perspective that help candidates to understand just, things to know and things to look out for through the interview process.
I love that. That's fantastic. So if you're
Yeah.
listening, reach out to Kelly and ask her more about that. Hey, you wrote something, or you have something on your LinkedIn profile that I caught my attention as we're
Uh-huh.
talking about this. And it says one of the things that you thrive in the midst of tough challenges. And it was a
Mm-hmm.
paragraph along with a lot of different things, but that's what I wrote down because I thought, you know what? There's a lot of people that are going through tough challenges. How can people like
Mm-hmm.
thrive through that in a time of transition, or it can even be just a time of, hey, they just need to, do some more things or different things to accelerate in their own career. Any thoughts around that?
For me and how I coach my candidates I work with, is a lot of it is mindset and
Mm,
confidence. And if you are in the gutter and you are not conveying confidence, that comes through big time. And so for me, in the last several years, I've been working on my own personal mindset a lot, because it has been hard. The last several years have been super tricky to navigate with all the things that have gone on in the world. And so there's a book actually called The Miracle Morning by Hal Elrod, and there's an app that will help you navigate. It's called The Miracle Morning, because you can spend 3 minutes, honestly, or you can spend a full hour, but the purpose is to get your mind right. And so if you're a candidate that's in transition and you're feeling in a funk, or you're stuck, or you're hopeless, all the emotions, you run the gamut, right? I had a candidate that actually made it to a final interview, and she was so deflated because this was her dream job, right? And then you just feel like you're set back, for months of interviewing with this top company she wanted to work for. And so having that mindset in the morning to set your day off is going to change everything. And so for someone like her, I would coach her, gosh, let's look at your mornings and get, back in the routine of, it's a process called savers, and it's silence, affirmations, visualization, a little bit of exercise, reading, and scribing, and
mm.
just 6 principles. Like I said, you can spend 3 minutes. They have these prompts in an app, and it's amazing. It's truly life changing if you can change your mindset from being in the dump sometimes, um, to just having that positive outlook. And sometimes it's hour by hour, sometimes it's minute by minute,
Yeah.
and it's a choice. And so, yeah, for people that are in transition or that are just frustrated, putting your resume to thousands of jobs, and you're not hearing back, just one foot forward, in front of the other. And ultimately the stars are going to align, and your mindset has to be right, though.
That's such great advice. Savers, Savers. I love that. I will tell you when I would say, as I think back, isn't it easier to look back on your career than it is to look ahead? When
Uh-huh.
you're looking at your head like, oh my gosh, but you look back and it's all so clear. And I
Mm-hmm.
think about when things changed for me, it was when I changed my mindset, but also my morning routine. And I've read that book,
Mm.
by the way. That's a fantastic book. I appreciate you bringing that up.
Yeah.
I would say for me, I'm part of the 5 a.m. club. I get up in the morning, I exercise, I have this routine. I'm curious for those
Mm-hmm.
listening, Kelly, do you have a routine that you follow? Or and
Yeah.
especially you, because you're a parent, you have children. I mean, I would think it'd be even more challenging in that case. Talk about that.
My morning routine starts the night before. So,
Mm,
last night, lunches are being prepped. Kids are setting their clothes out. I had my wardrobe out for today. Things are in line to prepare you for the next day. And
mm.
so, that way I'm not waking up frantic and panicked and rushed. And it's consistent. And so not only for me, but yeah, for my family, for the boys, to be in a pattern where they're preparing, and we're not last minute. We are now. Does this happen every day? No, I'm not perfect. We're
Of
not perfect.
course. Yes.
Uh, but when we can, the preparation the night before is key. And then that way I understand what my day looks like. I'm not just rushing into, things like this with the podcast. I'm prepared. I'm ready to go. And the savers from the Miracle Morning, that actually has been a practice that I'm usually pretty consistent in because it gets my mind right. And if I've had a
Mm.
stressful morning, getting the kids out the door, and I haven't had time to do that, then I will do that before I get to work. So, yeah, that to me has set my mind right, and a little bit of quiet time, praying or whatever I need to do to really just get ready for the day.
I love what you said. You said my morning routine starts the night before. That is gold. That is fantastic. I love that, Kelly. Let me ask you a question. And this is I've talked about this on the show before. I've written about this in I wrote about this in one of my books, but I want to talk for a second about career crossroads.
Hmm.
And I know that you have some experience here.
Mhm.
And so I want to ask you, there's a lot of people that are in these career crossroads where they're like, should I stay or should I go? Even
Mhm.
myself, I've been at my
Yeah.
company now for 20 years. And there were times where I got to certain points where either A, I was being recruited, or B, the real estate market crashed. I'm like, oh my goodness. Or
Mhm.
just different things happen. And you have
Mhm.
to decide, do I stay or should I go? Any thoughts around that for people that are listening on the show today?
That's a great question. I tend to be a risk taker,
Mm,
and a lot of people aren't. And so I understand and appreciate that. And at the same time, I think a lot of people miss out on opportunity because they haven't been willing to dip their toe in a different water. And so my biggest encouragement would be to be okay with trying something, and
mm,
maybe it isn't the next thing you're going to do for 10 years. Maybe it's just the next year you're going to be in that job for that company.
mm,
And that's okay. The other thing with that is, what's the worst thing that's going to happen? If I, for example, when I pursued the event planning business, I said, you know what? If I fall on my face, it's okay. I can always go back to doing what I was doing before, but I've
mm,
got to try it. It's in my DNA right now to just try this thing. And so, I think a lot of times we hold ourselves back because of security, or something that's, maybe uncomfortable or new, that we're not used to. And so I would just encourage everybody to really, put that aside and think, what would give me joy? What would be the next
mm.
best thing, for your family or for you personally, to get you to that next level, and not even from a career level perspective, but just, experience exposure, for what you want to do next.
I love that. The word joy. As a matter of fact, I always talk about people ask me, what does success look like? And I say, when you have joy.
Mm.
That is true success. You hit on something that happened for me. So 20 years ago, I've talked about it. I shared it in my first book, how I took a 60% pay cut to go do something different. And I
Hmm.
was managing, I was struggling, I was trying to manage my day. I wasn't trying to lead my life at all. But I remember thinking what you just said. I remember thinking, and by the way, I'm not a risk taker. So
Mm.
I was like, oh, I don't, but what you said was, hey, what's the worst thing that can happen? And I thought to myself, hey, if this doesn't work out, I can always go back to managing my day or
Yes.
managing. And so I took that leap of faith, and 20 years later, it's been an incredible career. I
That's
love that.
amazing.
Another thing I always thought about too was knowing like values. So you have like values that you lean on, like, hey, if I take this, should I take this position? Or should
Mm.
I
Mhm.
should I do this? I always go to, well, are the values in alignment? You ever think about that?
Oh gosh, yes. In fact, every single conversation that I have with candidates now is, do your personal values align with the company's professional values?
Mm,
And the culture. Culture is critical these days. Obviously, we all know this, but I see a lot of people that maybe out of desperation or fear, take the next job just because they need income, or they think it's the only thing that's going to be out there that they will be a qualified candidate for, but they're passing up potentially some other opportunities with companies that have a closer alignment to their value system. And if you have an opportunity to wait for that next best company that is perfect, no, they're not perfectly aligned. No company's perfect, of course, but I think joy comes when you personally are aligned with that company's mission,
Mm.
values, the culture. So yeah, I talk about that all day, every day with my candidates I work with, because it is so important to me.
Well, that's fantastic. This is so good. Hey, I got a couple more questions I want to ask you before we go to It's
Yeah.
Time to Accelerate. One of the things I do want to ask is you've been doing this for a long time. Like for people that are like, I don't know, submitting they decide they are going to make a change, or they are out of work and they need a new job. What's maybe changed in the last 10 years? I don't know. I'd say 10
Mhm.
years, even 5 years. I'm sure a lot's changed.
Yeah.
What's changed over time that people need to be thinking about when it comes to submitting for their next opportunity?
There are so many things that have changed in the last 5, 10 years. I was actually thinking this morning, I mean, when I first started HR, LinkedIn did not exist, you know? And so that's a crazy, wild thought,
A
but
world without LinkedIn. How is
I
that?
know,
Oh
I
my
know.
gosh.
It's weird to think about, but it's true. And
Yeah.
so applicant tracking systems have changed so many things about the candidate experience. And so, first and foremost, you absolutely have to have a LinkedIn presence and a
Mm.
profile. And so, if you don't, I absolutely encourage you to get that set up and be authentic. Show your values in your about statement. That will resonate with different recruiters and hiring managers that run across your profile that are looking for people that are like-minded. And HR professionals, especially, are going to be looking for those values and the cultural alignment. And so, navigating the applicant tracking system can be cumbersome and confusing sometimes. So, having different keywords embedded throughout your resume that match the job posting, that will help you to have what we call a higher match rate and get you through the systems at a greater
Mm.
level than if you didn't have those keywords. And an easy way to do that, Bruce, is
Hmm.
if you look at the job posting and let's say you're applying for a benefits administration position, and they talk a lot about benefits coordination, but you don't have benefits coordination anywhere in your resume, then that is going to be a disconnect. It's not, the system's not going to see that there's a match with that keyword. And so, of course, if you have that experience, you want to include it. If you don't, you can talk about you have a passion for pursuing benefits administration or whatnot, right?
Mm.
And so there are still ways that you can capture those keywords in a resume, even if you don't necessarily have that exact experience. You have the aptitude and capability, I'm certain, but you may not have exactly what the job posting is looking for. That's a great way to embed keywords throughout the resume.
Yeah, and the key is, and those are great tips, Kelly. I appreciate you sharing that. And the key
Yeah.
is just like getting your foot in the door, because after that, then you're going to sell yourself. You're going to tell your story, and good things are
Yes.
going to happen. But it's just getting through that first step. I love all of that. Hey, I want to ask you this last question before we kind of shift to It's Time to Accelerate.
Yeah.
And the questions around like career progression, like maybe, I don't know, what are some things that for someone listening and said, hey, I'm like not necessarily stuck, but I'm just been in this position for a while. I want to grow in my career. Any tips that, I don't know, something that helped you grow during your career or that you've seen others grow in their career? Any thoughts around that?
Yes. I asked for stretch assignments all the
Mm.
time. And what I mean by that is I asked every single manager I've ever had, what is a project or an initiative that I can be part of that will give me exposure to something I don't know or something
Mhm.
I'm not good at yet? And so, one of the jobs I talked about earlier when I was at WatchGuard Technologies as an HR manager, when I asked that question, I did not know what I was getting myself into. And all of a sudden, I'm speaking in front of 350 of our employees doing a training, and I'm like, oh my word. Okay. That was a stretch for me at the time, being a young HR professional, but every single experience like that elevated me to this day. And so if you haven't asked for those stretch assignments or being part of a cross-functional project or team, that's absolutely what I always recommend if you're wanting to grow in your career. When I was at Starbucks, I was part of an initiative that was, a global initiative that gave me such a different perspective than I had
Mm.
ever had before from a supply chain HR perspective. So, yeah, just always asking for more and not being afraid or thinking that you're not capable enough. You may not have figured it out, but it doesn't mean you're not worthy or capable of doing that job too. So
This is so good. Oh my goodness. So, and what you're saying also is that your boss is probably not going to come to you and say, "Hey, would you like a stretch assignment?" Like, no,
exactly.
right? You got to like you have to take the initiative and go to them and say, "Hey, I would like to, do you have a stretch assignment, something that will give me that exposure to continue my growth?" I love that.
Yes, yes. You can't wait for people to just drop things in your lap. You really have to go after it. And so, yeah, it's been my
This
favorite
is
thing to
so
do.
good. Oh my gosh, this is great. Hey, you've given some incredible advice on the show, but I do like to ask this last question. Were you ever given any advice during your career? Or it could have been even before you started, maybe even with your family advice, but any advice that you find it was just so valuable you find yourself sharing with others?
Yes, it is. Did you get one thing done today to move your business forward or to move your position forward? And if you did that one important thing, but you still have a to-do list that is full, it's okay. You can't do everything in one day or one week. And so, being okay with leaving things that you couldn't get done, and always reprioritizing, right? You've always got to look at your list and reprioritize and understand where you want to go, and not get so caught up in the minutia that you're forgetting your purpose and your legacy. So, yeah, when I go to bed at night, it's like, okay, did I do one thing to move myself or my business forward? And if I did, then I can sleep well at night and get up in the morning and do it over again. So,
That's so good.
thank
You know
you.
what word I wrote down here? I wrote down grace.
Ah,
Because, you have to give yourself I think too many times we beat ourselves up. Even myself, I'm like, I have all these things I need to do. But you're right. You just have to prioritize and focus on what matters, right?
Mhm. Yeah,
What's going to help you move forward. And then if you don't get anything else done, because life throws us curveballs, like just things happen. And we
yeah.
just have to give ourselves grace, like, hey, today's not going to be the day, but you know what? Tomorrow we'll start again, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think in the HR world, we tend to strive for perfection, myself
Mm.
included. That we're a lot of type A's and it's a great thing. It's why so
Yeah.
many of us have been successful because we care so much about the details.
Yeah.
But yeah, you certainly can't get everything done that you set out to do in a day. And so
Yeah.
I love that, giving yourself grace for sure.
Yeah. Oh, this has been so good. Listen, we could do this for hours. I
I
love this.
know.
I feel like I'm getting my own personal coaching here. This is so
Oh,
good. I love that. We're going to shift to it's time to accelerate. I'm going to ask you some fun questions. First question I always like to ask. I'm always curious if you would you rather read a book or listen to a podcast or both?
Oh, that's a great question. I have to admit, I'm not a huge book reader. I've been working on that. That's something I've definitely been trying to get better at. But podcasts are my thing. I love going on walks,
Mm,
and
mm.
that's my time to get reinvigorated, inspired, get away from my desk, and that gives me clarity. And so I love listening to a good podcast when I'm out on a walk.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. It's funny you said that about book. Early in my career, I remember having a goal of reading 4 books, like 1 book a quarter.
Uh-huh.
And today, I mean, I'm an avid book reader. I read a lot of
Oh,
books, but
yeah.
I also listen to podcasts. And depending on, if I'm working out, I listen to a podcast. So
Mhm.
I love both. Hey, in my last book, I talked about great leaders or grateful leaders. What are you grateful for, Kelly?
Oh man, so much. I think right now in this moment, I am most grateful for my family. And I know that's cliche, but everything that I've gone through with my husband's health, it really just does highlight
Mhm.
the importance of who you live with and who you surround yourself with. And I'm just grateful for progress with my husband's health. He's driving, and that hasn't happened for 4 years. He's back to school, finishing up a degree. And so, yeah, we're making progress as a family, and that's been really fun.
That's awesome. I love that. And
Thanks.
I'm grateful for you coming on the show sharing that. Hey,
Thank you.
I love talking about energy. Like what energizes you? Like outside, like obviously I'm sure helping people energizes you. What are some things that energize you?
Ah, I love that question. I love getting out to play tennis when I can. That is,
Mm,
yeah, I played in high school and it's my outlet to get some energy and stress out. And so I love a good tennis game. My son's playing tennis. And so I love also watching him play. That just brings me so much joy watching my little guy play basketball. So anytime we can be out playing sports and getting some activity, that energizes me big time.
So good. I love that. My daughter played tennis in high school, and so I love it when like I
Aw.
get to get out with her. Man, that's so good. I wish I was better.
Same.
Uh,
Same.
oh my goodness, this is so good. Okay, this is my final question. This is probably the question I love to ask the most, and that's Kelly, 10 years older. She's
Mm,
around the corner and she's knocking at your front door, and you're
mm.
going to go answer that door. What's she going to tell you?
I think she would tell you that it's okay that there's messes around the house because those boys are going to be out before you know it. And it's okay that you're not perfect because you're going to impact, so many different lives throughout your journey in the next 10 years. And just to keep one foot in front of the other and not lose focus.
It's okay. I
Yeah.
love that. It's so good. I appreciate you so much coming on the show
Uh,
today, sharing perspective, wisdom. I listen, I have like 2 pages of notes here. I'm just like, oh my gosh.
oh, thanks,
So
Bruce.
good. I'm going to put a few links in the show notes of some of the things we talked about. But for those who heard something today that resonated, or maybe they need some help with some of the things we talked about, whether it's career coaching or resume writing or consulting with their team, how's the best way for them to contact you?
They can reach me via LinkedIn if they find
Okay.
my profile, or they can email Kelly at Nevada HR Team. That's for the consulting side. And then for anyone that's individual contributor candidate, it's Kelly at my resume team. So I'd love to help anyone that is in transition that we've been talking about.
Wonderful. I will put those links in the show notes. So if you are listening and you want to connect with Kelly, be sure and let her know that you heard her on Life in Leadership Lane. She'll immediately know what's that connection, and I'm sure that you're going to add incredible value to whoever connects you. And so again, I appreciate you. I appreciate like everything you do for others to help them move along in their career. You're a blessing to many, and mostly I appreciate your friendship, Kelly.
Thanks, Bruce. Likewise. I appreciate you having me today. It's been an honor.
Awesome. I cannot wait to share this. I'll talk to you later.
Sounds good. Bye.